South Korea. Starting with double agent introduction. Jiang Shicheng's soul pierces through South Korean prosecutors, begins by solving a pathological psychologist, rescues a beautiful lawyer, but turns around to discover his mysterious identity. Surprisingly, a double agent. Jiang Shicheng doesn't want to continue like this. He used to have no choice, but now he has decided to be a good person, just cut off, and become an honest prosecutor. What he didn't expect was that the original owner had already done all the bad things. And the newlywed wife seems to be a righteous justice who hates evil as much as hatred and is determined to send the big shots father in, flexible bottom line, unrestrained behavior, familiar with spring and autumn. Chapter 1. Abnormal Psychologists. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Ding ding, the knocking sound kept coming from his ears, and Jiang Shicheng regained some consciousness. His eyes turned to open, but his eyelids were as heavy as iron. You can open your eyes now. A strange male voice sounded, and with this sentence, Jiang Shicheng exerted a slight force and opened his eyes. The lighting is dim, the space is spacious, and it looks like an office. What is this place? Also, how can't I control my hands and feet? Before he could see the scene clearly, a large amount of fragmented memories flooded into his mind, almost causing him to faint. Jiang Shicheng was somewhat surprised, but his eyes immediately returned to normal. He traveled through South Korea in 2006. I used to do a legitimate business in Mexico and did a good job, but I didn't expect to encounter a riot. Dufan and government weapons were mixed, and the last thing he saw when he closed his eyes was a stray bullet. Not bad, I have traveled to a relatively developed and safe place. This body, also known as Jiang Shicheng, is 26 years old and a prosecutor from Seoul's Central District Prosecutors Department 6. Why is it here? Jiang Shicheng had a slight recollection. He used his identity as a prosecutor to investigate the case of a well-known gang in Seoul, the Nanbudong Society, which used a psychological counseling agency as its entrance to sell prohibited drugs. Not right. Isn't he a prosecutor? Why do you work for the gang? He closed his eyes and continued to piece together memories. Orphan, disguised as a relative in the Southern Cave Society, privately provided him with money to study, and helped the Southern Cave Society become an undercover agent in the prosecutor's office after passing the exam. They really enjoy doing things like cultivating undercover agents. The leaders of the Seoul Central District prosecutors saw that his family background was innocent and his identity information was simple. In the end, they used money and beauty to win over the original owner and threatened him to actively accept the wooing of the Southern Dong Society, taking the opportunity to provide criminal intelligence to the leaders. Good guy, double agent. This life's identity is so exciting. And today, he took the opportunity to accompany lawyer Yin Suyen to psychological counseling and infiltrated this institution together to investigate first. Yin Suyen. It seems that are you a junior from the original owner's college years? The memory is not very complete, and the part related to her seems to be missing. Jiang Shicheng turned his gaze and found a young woman with half-undressed clothes lying on the spacious lounge chair beside him. The man in a white coat was standing next to her, gently tapping the glass with a spoon and making a ding-ding sound. It seemed that he felt Jiang Shicheng's awakening, and the man in the white coat turned his head to look at him again, his face very close. Well, just be conscious, the man in the white coat chuckled inwardly. Let your girlfriend take a good look later and see how I play with you. He poked Jiang Shicheng's chest and abdomen with a spoon, licked his lips, and said, "What a wonderful body. After playing, digging and selling it seems like you can make a lot of money." Fuck me. What does that mean? Jiang Shicheng was greatly shocked. Beautiful sister, you don't want it, instead you want to pick up soap. Playing so crazy. Do you still want to waste? It seems that hostile gangs not only sell banned drugs, but also engage in human organ trafficking. This is a big case. In the shock of Jiang Shicheng, the man in a white coat had already taken off his coat. What to do? Jiang Shicheng's mind was almost smoking. Based on the alertness of the predecessor, it is unlikely that they have taken any anesthetic drugs, coupled with their own conscious and uncontrollable body situation, combined with the first few ding sounds they heard. He was hypnotized. How to unlock hypnosis? Jiang Shicheng strives to recall relevant knowledge. In his past life, he did business in Laoimo. Although the local gang mainly focused on suppressing firepower, hypnosis techniques were sometimes used, and he had the privilege of being exposed to them. To unlock someone's hypnosis on your own, there are 3 simple steps. Maintain conscious alertness, distract attention, and have a strong sense of self-affirmation. As long as one can take the step of self-affirmation and eliminate the subconscious's trust in a hypnotist, they can allow their self-awareness to control their body. Jiang Shicheng is very alert and his attention is also distracted by 3 or 4 things. He now needs self-affirmation. He tried his best to feel his physical condition while deeply brainwashing himself. I have a firm will. I have subjective initiative. I can control my body. He opened his eyes wide and kept repeating in his mind. I am broad and profound. This is his greatest affirmation of himself. Ding ding, the man in a white coat took out a bottle of medicine from the drawer of his desk, poured out a pill, placed it in his palm, and then knocked on the glass twice. Eat this, he said excitedly. It's over. It's not something like sleeping black tea. Jiang Shicheng strongly resisted in his heart, but his right hand unconsciously lifted it, pinching the red particle and putting it into his mouth. His throat moved up and down and he swallowed it. I can feel my fingers now. I will soon be able to control my body. You can't give up all your previous efforts here. You can't plant here. Feeling the heat of his body and the touch of the man in the white coat touching his belt, Jiang Shicheng couldn't help but feel nauseous in his heart. But this heat and excitement broke through his control over his body. Taking advantage of the man in the white coat's lack of attention and the critical moment, Jiang Shicheng clenched his right fist and fiercely smashed it in front of him. Pudong, the man in a white coat, was knocked to the ground, rolled several times, and let out a loud cry. Jiang Shicheng propped up his body, clenched his fists, and felt the extraordinary strength of his body. A Sheba. How could you move? The man in a white coat covered his left face, his face full of disbelief. He self-taught and returned, but hypnosis has not yet failed. If you want to keep your consciousness, keep it. If you want to lose your memory, lose it. He has tried couple sandwiches more than once, and they all say that pairing men and women is not tiring to work, and he has experienced it. Just washed away the memories of this young man. I never thought it would crash on him. He also knew that the young man in front of him was from the Southern Cave Society, and coming here was definitely not good intentions. He planned to cut off some things and sell them afterwards. Coincidentally, the community has recently embarked on a hospital route and is in need of organs. Jiang Shicheng tightened his belt and walked up to the man in the white coat without saying a word. He kicked over the man in the white coat first, and then stomped hard a few times. Wait for death. Shibar. He almost lost his innocence and life, and now his body is still hot and dry. He urgently needs to release his emotional pressure. But as he kicked and kicked, his face gradually turned ugly. He withdrew his foot in disgust and turned to Yin Suyen on the side. Light brown long hair scattered on the lounge chair, slender eyebrows slightly furrowed, a small nose, and red lips relaxed with breathing. The beige short suit jacket is spacious, the white shirt is unbuttoned with 2 buttons, covered in snow, and the mountains are stacked, creating a breathtaking scenery. Wearing a short black A-line skirt below, the thin blanket that was supposed to cover the body was pulled aside, and the straight legs, white and round, were folded together. It's really smooth. Who? Jiang Shicheng took a deep breath and suppressed the heat caused by the pill. Suyen, wake up. He shook Yin Suyen's shoulder, only to find that she had no signs of awakening except for her furrowed brow. She doesn't know how many hours she needs to sleep to wake up on her own, so it seems she can only increase external stimulation. Jiang Shicheng glanced up and down. Pia. He slapped Yin Suyen's round thigh hard. Ah. What's wrong? Yin Suyen was awakened by severe pain in her dream and exclaimed in surprise. Senior. Why did you hit me? She couldn't help but feel a burning pain in her thigh. Jiang Shicheng pointed to her chest without speaking. Yin Suyen lowered her head to see the open buttons in front of her, Yu reading www.UUKangshu.net, and Dr. Jean lying on the ground convulsing. She instantly understood, her face changed, and her eyes were filled with fear and anger. She works as a lawyer and has seen all types of cases. The situation in front of him was clearly due to the psychologist's use of hypnosis with ulterior motives, which was stopped by Senior Jiang, and his slapping was only to awaken himself. Jiang Shicheng was a direct senior in the law department during her undergraduate studies. Later, she passed the judicial examination and both of them also studied in the Judicial Training Institute. However, Jiang Shicheng became a prosecutor, while she went on to become a lawyer. Last night, Jiang Shicheng approached her and directly introduced him to this institution. This psychological medical institution is a membership system and needs to be introduced. She only came for consultation once before and did not try hypnotherapy. Unexpectedly, such a thing happened today. While celebrating her survival from the disaster, she also felt ashamed of Senior Jiang. Senior, did you report to the police? Yin Suyen thought to herself. Not yet, I'll control him first and then go out and report to the police, Jiang Shicheng replied. He cannot let Yin Suyen know about the process of reporting to the police. According to the logic in memory, he needs to do two things now. 1. Call the superior of the prosecutor's office and ask them to apply for an arrest and search warrant from the court, arrest this psychopath, and then uncover the illegal drugs behind him, and even the unknown authenticity of the organ buying and selling incident. 2. Call the president of the Southern Cave Society and ask them to complete a search in the prosecutor's office to crack down on the criminals of this society, and then send someone to take over this area. Use black intelligence from the Southern Cave Society to assist the prosecutor's office in combating crime, and fill the gap brought by the prosecutor's office in combating crime in the Southern Cave Society. Yes, the original Jiang Shicheng ate black and white. Chapter 2. I am not a human being. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Untying the belt and tie of the abnormal psychologist, Jiang Shicheng tied his hands and feet together. Later, Yin Suyen was asked to stay in the room while she went to the corridor. He needs to follow the existing procedures to handle things. We cannot disrupt established plans and create unnecessary incidents as soon as we arrive. Taking out his phone, it was the Samsung SGH.E900 in his memory. He followed the fragments of his memory to find the number of his immediate supervisor, Li Myung-jen, the head of the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Criminal Department, in his phone book. Do, the silver boat sways and bends, listening to the familiar music. Jiang Shicheng felt a slight agreement with the minister's aesthetic taste in his heart. Lee Mingren, a Korean man in his 40s, really loves his classmates. I love Dawn. Shicheng. The voice came from the other end of the phone. Minister, it's me, Jiang Shicheng whispered. What intelligence is there? Li Mingren was very familiar with it. In Tongkei District, at number 753rd Street, Shandao Road, there will be people selling prohibited drugs in Renjong. The main culprits and hypnosis patients have committed sexual crimes. Jiang Shicheng spoke quickly. Got it, we'll send someone right away. Is there anything else? I don't have it for the time being, I just want to ask the minister when I can cut off the mission on the southern Dongxi side. Jiang Shicheng couldn't help but ask, cutting off his gang identity and becoming a prosecutor with a bright future and powerful authority. Don't worry, As long as you eliminate all the black and evil forces in the area you are responsible for, and then remove your criminal record, you can return to the Central District of Seoul as a hero, said Lee Mingren Yuyu, especially in the southern Dongxi where you are currently staying. Grass, if you don't want me to go back, just speak up. Jiang Shicheng's perspective is not trapped in the situation like the original owner, he is very clear about the meaning in Lee Mingren's words. Although the original owner served as a prosecutor for less than a year, he did everything he needed to do. And he reconnected with the Southern Cave Society, in order to prevent the president from suspecting that he was under the control of the inspection hall. He lied to the president that he had voluntarily requested to come here as an undercover agent, in order to collect criminal intelligence, crack down on black and evil forces, increase Lee Mingren's performance, and gain his trust. Once Lee Mingren's trust is gained, he can proactively screen out the Southern Cave Society and instead extensively disclose the criminal behavior of hostile gangs, focusing on cracking down on them. When the power of hostile gangs is damaged, the Southern Cave Society can then take over personnel territory, killing two birds with one stone. For this reason, Jiang Shicheng also helped the Southern Cave Society do a lot, which made the president trust this prosecutor, trained by them. At the same time, Jiang Shicheng has rarely handled cases or appeared in the past 6 months, but instead distributed his achievements to Lee Mingren, which made Lee Mingren trust him very much. Although he wished he could sink these two people directly into the Han River, he still had to speak well. Thank you, Minister Lee. I will do my best to stay hidden and continue to help you combat crime. I didn't say I would do you more credit, but rather that I would help you combat crime. This is the art of speaking. I'll hang up if it's okay. Lee Mingren looked very happy. Listening to the busy voice on the phone, Jiang Shicheng couldn't help but grip his phone tightly. Without stopping, he called the head of the Southern Cave Society, He Taiyuan. Hello, Shicheng. Dad, the matter is settled. Okay, I'll arrange the next process. Yes, Jiang Shicheng put down his phone and felt a slight headache. With that sound of Dad, his fragmented memories also emerged from his mind. He just married He Jian, the daughter of He Taiyuan, yesterday. They were classmates who were studying together at the Judicial Training Institute. The two met and got married under the secret design and matchmaking of He Taiyuan, in order to lock in Jiang Shicheng. And Lee Mingren also knew about this and tacitly agreed. After all, it was he who allowed Jiang Shicheng to actively contact the Southern Cave Society. Having a prosecutor as a son.In.Law and a dog as an undercover agent with a black silk son.In.Law status are both beautiful things for them. But his wife seems to have a grudge against evil, relying on herself to become a judge at the Seoul Central District Court, and is determined to send her father, the president of the Black Society, to prison. Great filial piety. Yesterday, He Taiyuan arrived uninvited and forcibly attended the wedding. In the end, the wedding ended and the guests dispersed. He Taiyuan told him about a certain illegal business of the hostile gang, the abnormal psychologist who sold banned drugs. Let Jiang Shicheng solve this business as a prosecutor, and at the same time, let someone occupy this vacancy. To her surprise, the conversation was overheard by He Jian. This made He Jian, who originally had a strong identification with Jiang Shicheng as a prosecutor and felt that the two were a perfect match, feel angry and feel betrayed by the two. So on the night of her wedding, He Jian locked herself in the room and didn't let him in. What a terrible life, what a complex background. And is a conspiracy bound to be overheard unexpectedly? What kind of novel has a bloody plot? Jiang Shicheng couldn't help but feel a headache and a slight weakness. The prosecutor's office has a handle on bribery and power and sex transactions, while the southern Dongxi community has illegal activities such as sheltering crimes. There is also a black and unscrupulous young lady's wife who hates evil as if she were a judge at home. He leaned against the wall of the corridor and hammered his forehead hard. The strange reaction caused by the medication became increasingly apparent, and he had some congestion on both ends. Senior, have you finished reporting to the police? Yin Suyen came out of the office and asked in shock. Well, I called someone I know. In a while, another prosecutor will come with a search warrant. Suyen, please go back first, I'll handle it here. I still need to take notes. Suyen is quite familiar with these processes. No need, you drive the car first, and I'll find you later. Jiang Shicheng shook his hand and directly refused, tossing his car key to her. We can't let Suyen stay here anymore. He felt a bit irritable due to the onset of the medication, and besides that, he had something else to ask the psychopath. He didn't tell Li Mingren about the speculation about organ buying and selling, and the intelligence obtained from the dark side also didn't include this one. He wanted to see if there were any points inside that could help him turn things around. Suyen looked at the car key in her hand and carefully scanned Jiang Shicheng. Her face turned slightly red, and when she wanted to say something more, Jiang Shicheng had already turned around and entered the office, closing the door. I'll wait for the senior in the car first, she shouted into the office, and then whispered, the senior is really full of vitality. Then she sighed lightly again, what a pity. In the office, Jiang Shicheng found an unused paper cup next to the water dispenser, took a few glasses of ice water, and drank them all in one gulp. This type of water dispenser is definitely clean, even if you are a pervert, you still need to drink water, and there is no need for a pervert to be abnormal to yourself. The transparent cool air spread throughout his body, and Jiang Shicheng calmed down a bit. He walked up to the pervert doctor and squatted down to pat his relatively normal face. However, the abnormal doctor's gaze at him remained very strange. Besides illegal drugs, who else do you help with human organs? How did you wake up? Simba. No one can do it. He remained stubborn and entangled in the matter. Jiang Shicheng pinched the identification card pinned to his chest and glanced at it. Jin Xianbin, right. He stood up and kicked hard again, shouting loudly. If you don't say it, I will reveal to the prosecutor's office the matter of your Renzhong association being suspected of buying and selling human organs, and there will naturally be pliers to pry open your mouths. He withdrew his foot and continued with a light smile. But if you tell me, I am the son.In.law of the president of Nanbudong, so there is no need to report to the prosecutor's office. We can cooperate and share some soup. Jin Xianbin's gaze instantly turned into doubt, warning him. Your weight is not enough, I need to tell President He. Besides me, you can only explain to the prosecutor. Jiang Shicheng thought for a moment and continued, I will have President He personally have a long conversation with you, but it must be after you enter. Think carefully, it's less than 10 minutes. The police are coming soon. After speaking, he turned around and leaned against Jin Xianbin's office chair, propped his legs up on the desk, and comfortably drank water. He is not afraid that Jin Xianbin will not say, whether it is to share a share of the pie with hostile gangs or to be uprooted by the prosecutor's office is cost-effective. Jin Xianbin, a knowledgeable member of the gang, cannot fail to understand. Sure enough, in less than 2 minutes, Jin Yubin lying on the ground couldn't help but shout out. I say it. I say it. Jin Xianbin twisted his body, wanting to face Jiang Shicheng. It's better to tell Jiang Shicheng now that he only admits to selling banned drugs and is sentenced to 3 to 5 years, it's better not to mention it now. After entering, it's better to be severely tortured and forced to confess, and finally find out about organ trafficking and intentional murder, and be sentenced to life. He resolutely chose to tell Jiang Shicheng. After all, the Southern Cave Society is also a mafia, and Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net also needs this business. It's Seoul Mingyi Hospital, I'm only responsible for hypnosis, I don't know the rest, he shouted softly. Seoul Mingyi Hospital, Jiang Shicheng silently jotted down this name. With so many hospitals in Seoul, he couldn't possibly know all of them and could only conduct further investigations. He then asked, where are the surveillance cameras in your area? I don't have surveillance here, Jin Xianbin's voice faltered. Jiang Shicheng nodded, yes. He can do all men and women in the office, How could he possibly have surveillance cameras installed? Can't the camera capture it clearly? Now we know which hospital they are targeting for organ sales, and the tribute they have made to Li Mingren this month has also been achieved. There are also arrangements for the expansion of their father.In.law's territory. In the following time, he must find a way out for himself. First, he must sever the ties with the black society, clean up the criminal behavior that caught him, and then become the prosecutor of the Republic of Korea under Wei Guangzheng. It is best to wash off your actions during this period as undercover agents, adding a touch of brilliance to your resume, so that you are not afraid of overturning the case. As for how to explain to He Taiyuan after cutting off the relationship, we will consider it later. If it really doesn't work, we can only try to take it down. However, the most important and difficult part now is how to make Li Mingren agree to his just division, return to the prosecutor's office, and once again eliminate the black and evil forces, in order to put an end to the future troubles. Or send Li Mingren and Qin's father.In.law away, and he will take over the Southern Dong Society, then openly face his Seoul Central District prosecutor. Since it's impossible to be a human with him sandwiched between the two sides, let's follow their wishes. Anyway, he's not prepared to become a person. Chapter 3. My husband wouldn't have sex with another woman on the second day of his wedding. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Jiang Shicheng leaned against his chair and asked a question without saying a word. Jin Xianbin hummed and didn't say much, and he closed his eyes uninteresting to rest. More than 10 minutes later, the sound of police sirens came from a distance and paused downstairs. This was a 20-story office building, and the psychological counseling institution was located on the 6th floor, with only a waiting room and an office. The conditions are so simple that Jiang Shicheng suspects how he tricked people into coming here to spend money on consultation. I don't do facade work either. In no time, the violent sound of opening the door rang out, and Jiang Shicheng slowly put down his feet and looked at the person coming. He is a young man in his 30s, wearing a silver-gray suit, a tie and leather shoes, and a 3 or 7-point back. He wears a prosecutor's badge and looks quite eye-catching. He is a typical Korean elite. Memories reappear. Jiang Shicheng finally understood, for some unknown reason, the original owner's memory was severely lacking and still very blurry. The man in front of him is called Jin Jianyu, a prosecutor from the Criminal Investigation Department. He was a senior in the Judicial Training Institute, with integrity, punishing evil and promoting good, fearless of power, and devoted himself to upholding national laws. However, he has always been unpopular within the department and always works hard and tiring. Jiang Shicheng couldn't help but laugh. It's no wonder he's not well liked in the South Korean judicial community. He stood up and smiled, bowing slightly. Senior, take over this case. I'll go back and report my work first. Later, he nodded slightly to the police officers behind Jin Jianyu and said, "Thank you all for your hard work." No hard work. Duties to be fulfilled. The prosecutor is polite. Several police officers quickly bowed and answered. South Korea's hierarchy is so fixed that Jiang Shicheng had never seen Lao Mo bow before in Mexico in his previous life. Being a prosecutor in South Korea is truly becoming a person. Jiang Jian. Jin Jianyu stopped him. What advice do you have, senior? Jiang Shicheng turned around and asked curiously. Jian asked me to investigate you, but I pressed it first. Jin Jianyu turned around and stared into Jiang Shicheng's eyes, asking in a deep voice. Back then, you were full of justice and swore with me to eradicate the corruption of the judiciary in the Republic of Korea. Why has it become so now? His eyes were full of confusion and pain. I hope you can give me an explanation after returning to the ground examination, otherwise, all the things you did will be made public to the public. Jiang Shicheng was somewhat surprised and did not answer. Instead, he glanced at the 3 silent police officers between the two. The 3 police officers felt his gaze and quickly lowered their heads, cursing inwardly. A Sheba. Immortals fight, ordinary people suffer. Don't let internal conflicts among your prosecutors kill us, young police officers, okay? But Jiang Shicheng, who was lying on the ground, suddenly started cursing loudly. A Sheba. You cheated me by stepping on your horse, you're the prosecutor. You cheated me by stepping on your horse. Jiang Shicheng ignored him and looked at Jiang Shicheng puzzled. What's wrong with this person's mind? With so many scenes, the pain in your eyes and the conflict between heaven and humanity can all go into Korean dramas. Isn't it just that I said a few more words of justice while studying and stole the goddess of the Judicial Training Institute that you have been longing for? I hate myself so much. Isn't there self-awareness when you're not as handsome as yourself, not as smart as yourself, and not as big as yourself? Despite roast in his heart, Jiang Shicheng still catches the point. He Taiyuan has started to look for prosecutors to investigate him, and it is normal for prosecutors to investigate each other internally. The original owner has never stood out in the prosecutor's office for a year, not even handling many cases, and is not prominent in the Seoul Central District prosecutors, so naturally no one will investigate him intentionally. I didn't expect my wife, who had just been married for less than a day, to actually mess with him, just because I heard a conversation. Is the sense of justice really that strong? Jiang Shicheng felt a slight headache. The pressure of two large mountains made him gasp for breath, and now a little demon has emerged halfway. It seems that we can only defeat demons first. He is never a soft-hearted person, anyone who gets in the way will disappear. Just calculate which is more cost-effective, whether to break the blocking stone or turn it into your own. I know, go back and check, Jiang Shicheng said with a serious smile. Jiang Shicheng nodded in satisfaction at his cooperation, but his gaze turned and he frowned slightly to remind him. Pay attention to the image of the prosecutor. Image. Jiang Shicheng couldn't help but lower his head and take a glance. Damn Jiang Shicheng. Taking off his casual suit jacket and draped it horizontally on his arm in front of him, Jiang Shicheng separated from the crowd and entered the elevator under the gaze of a group of office workers. The sound of police sirens and the news of the prosecutor's arrival had already spread throughout the floors, and everyone came to watch the excitement. I came downstairs and bought 2 bottles of mineral water from the vending machine. I drank 1 bottle of each ton first. To quickly eliminate the efficacy of such drugs, it is necessary to drink a large amount of water to achieve the effect of cooling the body and expelling drug components from the body. Don't ask why you're so familiar, it's because you've seen so much in your past life. As soon as I stepped out of the building, I saw Yin Suyen standing next to the car with an anxious expression on her face. Senior, how are you doing? I have already handed over to other prosecutors. Don't worry, the evil will eventually be brought to justice. When these words came out of his mouth, Jiang Shicheng felt a bit sarcastic, but upon second thought, he was indeed cracking down on crime. With a strong sense of justice in his heart, Jiang Shicheng beckoned Yin Suyen to board the car. A black Kia. Address. Ruizhou Central Road 8th Street, don't you know, senior? Yin Suyen looked at him with confusion. Just ask, I didn't expect it to be quite close. I'll do it when I have time in the future, Jiang Shicheng started the vehicle and said with a smile. Where does the senior live? Yin Suyen paused for a moment and asked curiously. Next to the National Central Library, it's only 5 or 6 kilometers away from you. So close. I work at the Central District Prosecutor's office, and my wife works at the Central District Court, so naturally she wants to buy a nearby house. Jiang Shicheng chatted while driving, diverting his attention. You're quite wealthy, living in Ruizhou Cave. It's all from home. Dad is the owner of Rueda Law Firm. Yin Suyen looked a bit embarrassed. Although she can speak fluently to judges in court, she always finds it difficult to speak up to this senior. Perhaps it was something that just happened, making her feel guilty. She comforted herself. Rueda Law Firm. It seems like an elite law firm located next to the Seoul Central District Court. I didn't even know before that this cute and charming student was still a daughter of a famous lawyer, so it seems like she inherited her father's profession. Jiang Shicheng was daydreaming while recalling all the intelligence and information he had. He took Yin Suyen to her residence and casually agreed to visit her next time, so he drove to his home. He needs to first dispel He Jian's aversion and concerns towards him, or directly solve He Jian, as she happens to be at home. The prosecutor's office and the court gave them half a month of marriage leave, and the judge is not working on Saturdays, while the prosecutor is basically on leave. However, Jin Jianyu belongs to the more hard-working category, and emergency situations always belong to him. Find her own small villa, which was secretly sent by her father.In. Law to his name, claiming to be for his precious daughter. He Jian is actually aware of this, but spending her father's money is seen by her as a drain on the organization's funds of the black and evil forces, and can be considered a good deed. Open the courtyard door and enter the password for the entrance, but it shows that the password is incorrect. Enter again, but the error still appears. What is the situation? Coming to the wrong place? Or is there a deviation in the incomplete memory? He rang the doorbell incredulously. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. The sound of footsteps approached from afar and eventually stopped behind the door. Jiang Shicheng leaned his eyes closer to the cat's eye, wanting to see what was happening inside the door. Unexpectedly, he saw a shrinking eyeball. And the person inside the door seemed to be scared by him, screaming and suddenly taking a few steps back. It can be confirmed that it is the voice of his wife, He Jian, in his memory. Immediately after, the door was opened, and a faint fragrance rushed towards her. She was a tall young woman who looked like a college student, but also had a hint of mature charm. Her slightly curled hair was draped on one side, and she wore thin gold-rimmed glasses. A few strands of broken hair were draped on the frame, her eyebrows and eyes were picturesque, her eyes were cold, her lips were pink, and her face was not painted. The clothes are simple white silk shirts and slim-fit jeans, with the hem of the shirt pressed against the waist of the pants, making the waist increasingly slender and presenting a picture of fine branches bearing fruit. The slim-fitting black jeans are tightly attached to the body, with a raised back and straight legs, outlining a captivating line. It seems that this is the wife of the original owner, the wife of the eyeglasses lady, with an attack speed of plus 50%, Jiang Shicheng thought to himself. Are you? He Jian asked coldly. What does that mean? Jiang Shicheng pushed his non-existent glasses. In his past life, he was nearsighted, and seeing He Jian's glasses made his hands itch. Who are you? He Jian continued to ask. Can you stop playing? I'm your husband, let me in first. Jiang Shicheng frowned slightly as he drank 3 bottles of water along the way and was very anxious. Husband. He Jian hugged her in front of her with both hands, holding up her surging conscience. She put on her glasses with one hand and sneered, my husband wouldn't hide from me the next day of his wedding to have a room with another woman. What? Opening a room. Jiang Shicheng was forced. Chapter 4. Methods. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What? Opening a room. Jiang Shicheng was a bit confused, and there was no memory of opening a house in his mind. After scanning him from head to toe, He Jian cursed contemptuously, it's really dirty. Go find your good schoolgirl. I'm about to bring the door with me. Wait. Jiang Shicheng stuck his foot on the door frame and grabbed the edge of the door with both hands. Please make it clear when I open a room with someone else. Jiang Shicheng was a bit angry. Even though it was just a fantasy, women tend to fabricate various stories when their emotions arise. What can't be said properly? He disregarded the situation, forcefully broke open the door, then dodged into the house and closed it. As long as two people are in a closed environment, the initiative is in their hands. Before he could speak, He Taiyuan took out her phone from her pocket behind her, opened the photo, and flipped it over before his eyes. The photo is a selfie from the perspective of He Taiyuan, standing clearly at the front desk of the hotel, with the back facing the camera. She is pulling out her wallet to pay, and there is a blurry but recognizable room card on the front desk. The photo was posted on He Taiyuan's social media account. It seems to be a hotel around that psychological counseling institution. Jiang Shicheng's scalp tingled, and he couldn't say anything on his lips. He frowned and slowly lowered his head. Damn it, don't care about such a beautiful wife, run out and have a house. Humph. I feel ashamed now. You wait to be exposed. He Taiyuan looked at Jiang Shicheng's lowered eyes with hatred and said angrily. Jiang Shicheng dare not look up, he is afraid that he cannot hide the ferocity in his eyes. For a moment, he thought of taking action directly, but the thought only flashed by. With the current methods of criminal investigation, he is not fully prepared and rashly kills people. He cannot escape investigation. On the second day of our wedding, the primary suspect is him. The things he had done and the plans he had made kept flashing through his mind. Although he didn't know why He Taiyuan had this photo of something that was clearly not PS, but had never been done before. But this photo has once again intensified the conflict between him and He Taiyuan. Is it something you did during your own hypnosis gap? It's not impossible. But He Taiyuan was also hypnotized, and Jiang Shicheng was clearly a simple pervert and serving the gang. Not right. I don't know if He Taiyuan has been hypnotized, she may be pretending. Did you actually open a room? If there were, with He Taiyuan's beauty and figure, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage either. No, be serious. Jiang Shicheng shook his head and continued to brainstorm. Another possibility is that He Taiyuan was not hypnotized, but only herself was hypnotized. During this time, He Taiyuan and herself pretended to be in a room, and her memory was later erased. Because he can clearly feel that there is no soil erosion in his body. Perhaps this body is too robust, able to work day and night without feeling much at once. Pop. He slapped himself directly and fanned out these strange thoughts. Keep thinking. You. Do you think slapping yourself would forgive you? Betrayal is betrayal, I can't tolerate it. He Taiyuan silently put down her jade hand and saw Jiang Shicheng slapping her so hard. Although she was a bit surprised, her tone remained firm. She knew that if she wasn't tough at this time, it would only be her who would continue to get hurt afterwards. She has judged many cases and is very clear about the consequences. Jiang Shicheng cleared his distractions and continued to deduce in his mind. Another possibility is that He Taiyuan is the villain, with the aim of taking that photo and provoking a conflict between him and He Taiyuan. And Jiang Shicheng was entrusted by her to handle affairs for her. As for Jiang Shicheng's abnormal behavior, is it a bad taste? Or perhaps that was also He Taiyuan's arrangement, in order to shoot a video and leave more evidence, to directly divorce He Taiyuan and herself. Is He Taiyuan plotting for herself? A bit too narcissistic, Jiang Shicheng touched his chin. But he feels that this direction is right, at least not far off. Unless the original owner is really bad enough to cheat like him, but he happens to be missing that memory. What should we do now? Jiang Shicheng continued to turn his head. You speak. We all know that silence cannot solve the problem. If you have anything else to argue about, just finish it quickly and let's go through the process. He Taiyuan was very angry. Although Jiang Shicheng slapped herself twice, this kind of lowered head and silent behavior is a tacit assumption that things have already happened. He Taiyuan was so angry that she felt nauseous. She shook Jiang Shicheng's arm vigorously to make him speak. Jiang Shicheng listened to her words as if he had thought of something, and suddenly looked up at He Taiyuan, his eyes shining brightly. Yes, go through the process. His originally planned process was to come back and eliminate He Jian's doubts and resentment, then cut off the identity of the black sexy society, and then cut off Li Mingren's control. Just the rhythm was suddenly disrupted. And now there seems to be a path to take. He suddenly grabbed onto He Jian's shoulders with a serious expression and a flickering gaze. You. What are you doing? He Jian was scared by the sudden attack and couldn't help but wriggle and struggle. Let's not do it for now. He grabbed He Jian's shoulder and looked at her seriously. Jian, I'll tell you a secret. I haven't told anyone except you about this secret. What secret? He Jian struggled and immediately looked at him coldly. I am an undercover agent. What? What? He Jian was taken aback, her brain circuits couldn't keep up. I am an undercover agent in the prosecutor's office, and I came into contact with the Southern Cave Society and your father because I am an undercover agent. Jiang Shicheng said word by word. Undercover. So what you said to that man? I took the initiative to become an undercover agent because I know your wish is to send your devilish father to prison, but as my son.In.Law, the prosecutor's office will not send me investigation documents. So. You came into contact with him, pretending to cover up for his criminal behavior, actually acting as an undercover agent, secretly collecting criminal evidence. He Jian seemed to understand a bit, but she still remained skeptical. After all, she heard the conversation with her own ears and the details were clear. Yes, but the cost is that I need to gain your father's trust, do those things, and pass on the credit to Minister Li during this period. Jiang Shicheng expressed his heartache, but his eyes were firm. You know, in order to fulfill your wish, I can only think of this method, but now it hurts to see you misunderstand me. But I am not saddened that you misunderstood me, but rather that you misunderstood my intention, thinking that I had abandoned my original oath and let you bear the pain of being concealed by everyone alone. Jian, you have to trust me. I'm also investigating the case today. Today. You also went to investigate the case. He Jian was somewhat surprised. But she clearly caught the key point in the conversation. Jiang Shicheng went against his original intention, paid the price, endured humiliation, and was forced to take credit. He became unknown in the prosecutor's office and undercover in the Southern Cave Society. It was to fulfill her childhood wish of sending her biological father to prison. However, these are just one-sided words from Jiang Shicheng. And the words she overheard last night still echo in her ear. How to explain that photo? He Jian looked up and couldn't help but ask about that photo. I was hypnotized. The suspect in today's investigation is a psychologist, and that photo was taken by the doctor who hypnotized the two of us. I almost hit him. Jiang Shicheng's eyes flashed with a hint of fear. He was really scared and put himself in such a dangerous situation, out of his control. If he were really invested by that perverted doctor, he felt that dying would be more painful. So now. It's okay, I can only say that I'm lucky. Jiang Shicheng paused and then asked strangely, did you find Senior He Taiyuan to investigate me? Yes, He Jian lowered her head. Would you rather believe others? Jiang Shicheng appeared very shocked. No, I'm just skeptical. He Jian hesitated. After all, finding someone to investigate her newlywed husband is not something that can be easily said. Would you rather believe in your husband's political enemies than trust him? He Jian, you make me very sad. Is it difficult, you and He Taiyuan? Jiang Shicheng appeared incredulous, his eyes painful, and his tone eventually became cold and disappointed. He certainly knew that He Jian was just asking He Taiyuan to investigate him, but this did not affect his use of this to come to He Jian. I didn't. I was just a little anxious. Yin Suyen's tone suddenly rose and then fell low again. It's okay, you reading www.uukangshu.net. It's not your fault. You probably heard my dad and I talk last night. Jiang Shicheng sighed lightly and continued. That was me deceiving my father in order to gain his trust. If you don't believe me, you can ask my father and Minister Li, or you can wait for me for a few days. In a few days, I will definitely let you see the truth from the prosecutor's office notice. I wait for this announcement. If I really wronged you, then He Taiyuan gritted her teeth and said, I will naturally compensate you. Under the impact of excessive information, she didn't fully understand for a moment, and could only temporarily put aside her doubts and wait for the announcement that Jiang Shicheng had mentioned. Jiang Shicheng nodded with satisfaction. It's not in vain for him to rack his brains and talk nonsense. No matter how smart a woman is, she always loses her composure in front of her husband and children. He Taiyuan is obviously the same. He now understands and is confident and fearless. He Taiyuan knew he was an undercover agent in the prosecutor's office, but pretended to be an undercover agent in the gang. If He Taiyuan asked, he would definitely tell his daughter that he didn't know. If she asked Li Mingren again, he would not deny it, because once someone could ask such a question, his identity would inevitably be exposed. He won't abandon or ruin the reputation of a prosecutor before it's unclear, let alone be his own person. Jiang Shicheng raised his hand and wanted to touch He Taiyuan's hair to test her level of trust in him, but before his hand could touch it, He Taiyuan had already stepped back half a step and avoided his hand. The newlywed young woman with gold-rimmed glasses frowned slightly and looked at him with a hint of caution. Jiang Shicheng couldn't help but laugh, but it's okay. As long as he can temporarily dispel her subjective initiative and not cause trouble for himself, he can start moving on to the next step of the plan. Chapter 5. Investigated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You should have something else to do, He Taiyuan recoiled and reminded softly. Of course, I'm just joking with you, Jiang Shicheng smiled and put down his arm. Due to the lack of memory, his feelings towards He Taiyuan were like the wife of another person in his mind. He Taiyuan is the wife of Jiang Shicheng, not his wife. The joy of Wei Wu's legacy adds a touch of charm to He Taiyuan. But women are just seasonings, and staple food is the key. Even without seasoning, staple food can become bland and difficult to swallow. But humans cannot be controlled by desire, the lower body determines the brain, and in the end, only the bones in the grave will remain. He really has something to do. Contact Li Mingren, investigate Yin Suyan's purpose, notify Che Laozhang in advance, and prepare to face He Taiyuan's investigation. One matter after another must be resolved. He Taiyuan has temporarily stabilized. By the way, what is the password for the door? Jiang Shicheng remembered that he had entered it several times and it showed that the password was incorrect. The password has not been changed, He Taiyuan looked puzzled. No changes made. Jiang Shicheng remained calm and smiled, saying. After being hypnotized, my mind is a bit confused and I can't remember. Jian, please tell me again. Well, the password is. After asking for the password and trying it out, Jiang Shicheng and He Taiyuan greeted each other and said they wanted to handle the case of Yin Suyan and just now, so they left the door. He arrived at the garage as soon as possible and called Li Mingren. The silver boat sways and bends, Minister, it's me. Jiang Shicheng leaned against the reclining seat, his expression relaxed. Shicheng, didn't you just get in touch at noon? Li Mingren on the other end of the phone was somewhat surprised. Jiang Shicheng has always been cautious and has rarely called him twice in a day. Minister, I'm going to be discovered, Jiang Shicheng said softly. What are you saying? Li Mingren's voice immediately became high, with a hint of surprise and anger. Jin Jianyu is starting to investigate me, and as you know, the things I did that couldn't hide the investigation, especially for you. You come to my house right away, let's have a face-to-face conversation. Li Mingren interrupted him and said in a deep voice. After saying this, Li Mingren hung up the phone and slammed his phone heavily on the table, his face constantly changing. Jiang Shicheng put away his phone, adjusted his seat, fastened his seat belt, ignited the car, and drove towards Li Mingren's house. After working for so long, it's time to seek some benefits. He easily dialed He Taiyuan's phone again, and there were a few words he needed to say in advance. For example, He Jian really calls her father. Villa, He Jian study. Sitting at the desk, He Jian held her phone tightly, frowning and looking conflicted. Looking at the divorce agreement that had just been printed out this morning on the computer, she paused for a long time. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she flipped through the drawer and carefully read Jiang Shicheng's resume, which she had only recently obtained. Because last night she locked the door directly and didn't let Jiang Shicheng in, so now it's not that I know your root, you know my bottom. But she couldn't forget what Jiang Shicheng and the man said, the intelligence, location, and plan were all very detailed. Although Jiang Shicheng's words today were sincere and sincere. Looking at Jiang Shicheng's resume over the past decade, the more carefully she examined it, the deeper her eyebrows furrowed. Orphan, she is aware that what He Jian values is never his family background, but his diligence, integrity, and exceptional intelligence demonstrated in the training institute. Mainly because of his handsome appearance. But being supported by relatives all year round, Jiang Shicheng has never taken her to visit any relatives during the time he has been in contact with her, nor has he told her about anything before college. Suddenly, He Jian shivered coldly, thinking of a possibility that would make her spine and scalp tingle. Perhaps her prosecutor's husband is an undercover agent for the mafia. And after he became a prosecutor, he came into contact with her father, sheltered the Southern Cave Society, and assisted the tyrant, only in return. And then find some criminal cases from other gangs to keep the prosecution's mouth shut. Although it is strange to encounter some cases on a daily basis, is this kind of thing that only happens in TV dramas going to happen next to her? The more she thought about it, the more terrifying it became. She even suddenly thought that her meeting with Jiang Shicheng was also planned by them. It's simply thought. Provoking and terrifying. If Jiang Shicheng knew about He Jian's thoughts, he would praise her for being a judge and being really clever in riding horses. After a long time of calming her mood, He Jian opened her phone, flipped out the number she had not dialed in a long time, and pressed the dial button. She decided to investigate first, as this man seemed to have too many secrets. The phone is connected. Is it Jian? The voice at that end seemed very happy. Dad. Jiang Shicheng found Li Mingren's house, which is a standalone villa. Corrupt officials are really damn it. It's not kind of them to suck on the people's wealth but not let them. Grandma, whoever's money is greedy, it's all his money. Sooner or later, Li Mingren will have to spit it out. He gritted his teeth, cursed inwardly, and rang the doorbell of the villa. The door opened, and it was Li Mingren. He was a calm and thin middle-aged man, less than 40 years old, with a simple face and a strong official aura. I've met the minister, Jiang Shicheng bowed honestly and shouted, it's not time to turn his back yet. Li Mingren greeted with a smile, Shicheng, come in quickly. Jiang Shicheng put on his slippers, only to find another pair of exquisite leather shoes placed at the threshold. It seems like there's someone else. Minister, I apologize for coming in a hurry and not preparing some local specialties. Jiang Shicheng apologized slightly. Entering the room, Chen Jian is also here. Li Mingren walked towards the living room with his hands behind his back. Jiang Shicheng followed him to the living room and saw a middle-aged man with a beer belly sitting next to the main seat, smiling at him. He pondered for a moment and recognized who the person in front of him was. Chen Juhai, the minister of the 7th Criminal Department, is not strong in ability and looks insignificant. In the second inspection, he was a famous old fogey, who was only a minister who mixed his qualifications. On weekdays, I mainly play LV Buliu, skilled in flattery and flattery. It seems that today we are here to flatter together with Li Mingren. Why is Minister Chen here? Jiang Shicheng expressed surprise. Come and have some tea, chat with Minister Li about daily life. Chen Juhai still smiled, why is Jiang Jian here? Come and give a job report. I just changed hands on a case. It's still better to be young, so energetic. I came to handle the case on the second day of my wedding. But I heard that Jiang Jian has only handled a few major cases in the past 6 months, and the assessment is also the last in the second round. Why are you so diligent now? Chen Zhuhai sipped his tea and continued to smile. Xianima squinted her eyes and really wanted to punch you in the face. Jiang Shicheng smiled awkwardly. You can sit there, Li Mingren pointed to the end of the long table in the living room. As soon as I came up, I put myself in the last seat to tell myself that nothing is true. Jiang Shicheng nodded and calmly pulled out his chair to sit down. Minister Li, this case is a bit complicated, and my report on work is expected to take quite some time. Minister Chen is waiting here. Not really good, right? Jiang Shicheng glanced at Li Mingren and his gaze drifted past Chen Zhuhai. The meaning is that when it comes to our relationship, outsiders should not listen casually. They need to show their attitude. Sure enough, as soon as he spoke, Chen Zhuhai's face changed slightly and he looked at Li Mingren, asking his meaning with his eyes. Minister Chen is his own person, Li Mingren waved his hand, gesturing for Jiang Shicheng to speak frankly. Jin Jianyu is investigating me, Jiang Shicheng said without any affectation. Why did the gold inspection investigate you? Chen Zhuhai suddenly asked from the side. Jiang Shicheng did not answer, but directly asked Li Mingren. Minister Li. Should I tell you or tell him? Listen to him finish speaking first, Li Mingren frowned and glanced at Chen Zhuhai. Yes, Chen Zhuhai nodded with a smirk. He is not like Li Mingren, who has someone above him. He comes from a humble family and can only survive by following the crowd. Although he is also a minister, his status differs from that of Li Mingren. To what extent? Li Mingren turned his head and asked. I already know what I did in the Southern Cave Society, but if I continue to investigate, I'm afraid I'll soon know what I did for you. That's it. Li Mingren nodded. What does the Southern Cave community say? I'm afraid I'll also find out that I'm an undercover agent of the prosecutor's office, Jiang Shicheng continued to ramble. So what are you going to do? If you can't hide it, then the person in charge of the investigation. Li Mingren's eyes froze as he didn't want to give up on this undercover agent who could bring him unlimited achievements so soon. He wants to eat Jiang Shicheng for a lifetime. If investigated, it will inevitably uncover his own corrupt behavior, which will threaten his career. Then just deal with the investigator directly. No one investigated, so naturally it was concealed. Chapter 6. A Talent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jiang Shicheng did not answer directly, but glanced at Chen Zhuhai again. If unrelated people know about the next plan, it will be a fatal lever for him. However, he can fully explain to Li Mingren, as they are a community of shared interests and he still has leverage in his hands. Li Mingren trusts him very much. And in his plan, Li Mingren won't live long either. Seeing Jiang Shicheng's gaze, Li Mingren paused for a moment. Minister Chen can completely believe it. You can believe it, I can't believe him. Jiang Shicheng has a headache. Chen Zhuhai was an unexpected event in the plan, and he had to make a new plan based on it. What he could say now must also be polished. I hope the minister can publicly declare that I have been working as an undercover agent in contact with the black society during this period, in order to help the prosecutor's office crack down on crimes committed by black and evil forces. Jiang Shicheng directly pointed out. No way. Li Mingren refused without even thinking. But minister, there's no other choice, unless you want to harm Jin Jianyu, Jiang Shicheng said anxiously. The cost of dealing with a prosecutor is much greater than admitting to my undercover status. Are you teaching me how to do things? Li Mingren squinted at him. I dare not. Jiang Shicheng lowered his head and whispered, clenching his hand tightly under the table. Wait, let the king of hell teach you how to do things then. No, think about it again. Is there a better way? Li Mingren shook his head and refused. It's really impossible for you to promise not to feed you more cakes until you see the rabbit and scatter the eagle. Jiang Shicheng smiled and said. Minister, listen to me. Admitting that I am an undercover agent may not bring you all bad things. You also know my identity. The president of the Southern Cave Society is my father.In.Law, although his daughter and he are incompatible. But in the past 6 months, I have gradually gained his trust. Before I came, I had already communicated with him, and the prosecutor's office admitted that I was an undercover agent. It was just a matter of credit and protection exchanged with the local prosecutor's office to avoid investigation. Even after making a public statement, I will not sever ties with the Southern Dong Society, and President he will trust me even more. At this time, I will find an opportunity to hand over all the criminal evidence collected in the past 6 months to the minister, and work together with Minister Liang Wei to annihilate most of the black and evil forces in Seoul, making the minister a strong candidate for the second chief prosecutor of Seoul's Central District Prosecutor's Office. Li Mingren just listened quietly and remained silent after listening. Instead, he fell into contemplation. Chen Juhai listened attentively on the side, suddenly not knowing what he was thinking. Fu Lingxin asked with a heart full of excitement. What if Jiang Jian has already joined the Southern Cave Society? After all, he is now his father.In.Law. Upon hearing these words, Li Mingren's eyes suddenly became sharp and he looked up at Jiang Shicheng. Jiang Shicheng's pupils suddenly shrank, but he still tried his best to stay calm and turned to laughing. Why would the minister believe such words? I have received so much promotion from you, and I have always held a grateful heart. I regard the minister's responsibility as my responsibility, and the minister's honor as my honor, without any hesitation. Besides, the minister still has my handle in his hand. I am already on the same boat as the minister. Gan Lin Yang. Squeeze your eyes and wait, you will be the next to die. If Li Mingren starts to doubt Chen Juhai because of his words, then his plans and arrangements will all be in vain. He doesn't have much capital at his disposal, and in order to break free from the shackles of both sides, he must burn his bridges, and there must be no unexpected changes in the early stages of the plan. Li Mingren nodded in satisfaction and praised. Shicheng has always been very loyal, and besides, prosecutors don't have a better future than Blackie. He only farted the previous words of Jiang Shicheng, and he listened more to the scenes of showing loyalty. However, the subsequent part of Jiang Shicheng was true. The two of them were on the same boat, and he still had his leverage in his hands. Betraying him was not beneficial. With the trust of Li Mingren, Jiang Shicheng turned to Chen Juhai and said in a deep voice. Minister Chen and Minister are like dot-minded people, so don't provoke Minister Chen's trust in me. Minister Chen has always seen my loyalty in his eyes. Besides, I have been doing things for so long and I think I have worked a bit hard. He needs to have a tough attitude and express anger, along with a simple reminder of his credit. Just like Do, the harder he becomes, the more Li Mingren trusts and likes him, and the more likely his demands are to succeed. Seeing that Li Mingren still didn't nod, Jiang Shicheng decided to use his squinting eyes again. Minister, it happens that Minister Chen is also here. You are using me as a topic, making a public statement, demonstrating the demeanor of being rewarded for your contributions, and letting Minister Chen see it. Are you still afraid that there will be no one available in the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office in the future? He looked anxious and spoke in a high tone. Chen Juhai was choked and decided not to speak anymore, just to watch coldly, while at this moment he had only one thought. This person is too special to speak, and too special to dare to speak. In contrast, his flattery were actually inferior. Speak with a righteous attitude, and then use your small hands to do something practical, making the leader feel that he has also done a good thing, reducing the already existing guilt and betrayal when the leader receives benefits. Making the leader truly feel that he is a useful talent cannot be separated from him. Chen Zhuhai's thoughts became more and more transparent, and he couldn't help but feel revered in his heart. Jiang Shicheng, he is a talent. As Jiang Shicheng's words fell, Li Mingren also made a decision. He nodded slowly and said with a smile. Then we'll do as you said. We'll organize the materials and issue a notice in the next 2 days, and hold a press conference next Monday. He stood up and walked to the end of the table, patted Jiang Shicheng's shoulder, and said earnestly. Now that Shicheng is honored, he may be able to step into the ranks of young celebrity prosecutors with just one step, and the future is promising. It's all cultivated by the minister, and I will definitely be the leader of the minister. The promotion of the minister to deputy minister is just around the corner. Jiang Shicheng immediately stood up and bowed heavily, loudly saying. You're just about to enter the coffin, Li Mingren. He thought to himself. Afterwards, Jiang Shicheng and Li Mingren talked for a while, mainly about the specific events that Jiang Shicheng has done for Li Mingren in the past 6 months, as well as some of his illegal behaviors in the Southern Cave Society. Chen Zhuhai only listened for a few words before leaving. Let you hear his secret, which shows that he trusts you and wants you to be tied to him. But you can't help it. 1 or 2 are acceptable, but if there are too many, it won't work. What kind of person can know all the secrets of others? Only fish are fed under the Han River. So in his opinion, even if Jiang Shicheng can safely get through this crisis, successfully clean up his criminal behavior, and add the honor of being an undercover agent, it will not be long in the future. What kind of bullshit celebrity prosecutor? Jiang Shicheng's only value is lurking in the Southern Cave Society, constantly providing credit to Li Mingren. Now that his value is gone and he still knows Li Mingren's secret, he will eventually be abandoned. Poor thing, I heard we only got married yesterday. Chen Zhuhai drove home calmly, thinking of the beautiful and charming wife at home, his eyes flickering with longing. That wealthy ex-wife died early, and his second marriage has only been 6 months. Chapter 7. Exchange with He Taiyuan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Half an hour after Chen Zhuhai left, Jiang Shicheng also left. He is driving towards the southern Dongxi stronghold, and He Jian's place is temporarily stable. Li Mingren has already completed this, and he is preparing to connect with his father.In. Law before returning home at night. At night, investigate Yin Suyan's purpose and thoroughly open up He Jian's heart after returning home. The plan is being implemented and improved step by step, and the situation is developing towards the positive side. Waiting for the red light, Jiang Shicheng lit a cigarette and took a deep breath. He held the cigarette in his left hand and draped it against the window edge. Smoke spewed out of his mouth and poured into his nose. He kept the plan in his mind, thinking about what to say to He Taiyuan later. 20 minutes later, he arrived at an office building in the Ruizhou district. Don't think that the Black Sexy Society is just a group of thugs wearing vests, tattoos, and a fierce look on their faces. That's the bottom level of the Black Sexy Society. After so many years of development, many black and inexperienced business industries have long been spread across black and white, and the upper level is no different from the white-collar management of the company. However, sometimes violent means are also used. And the small office building in front of him is the property of the Southern Cave Society, most of which are small companies. Jiang Shicheng confirmed in advance that He Taiyuan and his team are holding a meeting here for industrial adjustment. Finding the room, Jiang Shicheng knocked on the door and directly opened it to enter. Hey, isn't this prosecutor Jiang? Why did he suddenly remember to look at my father.In. Law? Shui Uncle He Taiyuan, sitting at the head of the long table, joked in his tone. Jiang Shicheng's true identity is only known to him in the entire Southern Cave Society, so the two of them still need to play a scene of a just prosecutor and a black and evil sect leader confronting each other in front of everyone. As long as the mastermind knows about undercover agents, is it still called an undercover agent? Dad, let these people go out first. The prosecutor's office has something for me to bring to you. Jiang Shicheng pulled over the empty second handlebar seat and sat down casually. His words made many people show a fierce expression, obviously unwilling. Across from Jiang Shicheng, the young man with a rebellious expression slammed the table and stood up, whispering. Jiang Shicheng, although you are a prosecutor, don't forget that you are still the president's son.In. Law. This is still the territory of my Southern Cave Society. Oh. Is that right? Jiang Shicheng glanced at He Taiyuan unexpectedly. Are all the young people like this now? This young man knew that Park Junlong, the son of the former second-in-command of the Southern Cave Society, had taken on the temporary position of second-in-command after his father's death. Although his status and qualifications were inferior, he was not favored by the gang members. Acting impulsively and with a hot temper, it's like Wu Daoang sucking on the milk and jumping around. However, according to the original owner's memory, Jiang Shicheng felt that this young man was not simple. Most people probably couldn't even get the position of second-in-command. He Taiyuan looked at Jiang Shicheng with permission in his eyes. Jiang Shicheng saw the look in his eyes and felt clear in his heart. He quickly picked up the glass in front of him and smashed it hard at Park Junlong's head. Bang! Pop! The glass fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Ah! Shiba! You dare to smash me! Park Junlong was hit by a glass cup and let out a painful cry, with blood streaming down his forehead. He covered his forehead and glared angrily at Jiang Shicheng, with a fierce expression in his eyes. But I didn't dare to take action. Where did you come from, little rascal? You dare to interrupt me when I'm talking to President He. Jiang Shicheng sat down again, lit a cigarette, took a puff, and spoke calmly. Jiang Jian. Although Junlong's tone was a bit aggressive, there's no need to take action. Jiang Shicheng was facing him, and a handsome man looked at him with a slightly condemnatory look in his eyes, smiling and saying. As soon as he spoke, everyone's gaze turned to him except for He Taiyuan, and Jiang Shicheng was no exception. Oh, Jixian thinks I shouldn't fight back after being scolded. Jiang Shicheng looked at him with interest. This person is the half-brother of He Jiyan, who was a seed broadcasted by He Taiyuan while indulging in extravagance and drinking before his marriage. Jiang Shicheng remembers that he was informed of his identity by his biological mother after the age of 20, so he abandoned his ordinary office worker adoptive father and recognized He Taiyuan as his biological father. Belonging to is truly recognizing the thief as a father. If Junlong speaks rudely, we will naturally punish him. Could you please give me face, Shicheng? He Jixian smiled according to the document in front of him. In his opinion, Jiang Shicheng has just got married, and his uncle's name is still worth some money. Unexpectedly, Jiang Shicheng didn't maintain a good expression. Instead, he patted the table and raised his eyebrows angrily, saying, "Give you face. As your brother.In. Law, I have been bullied and want to give face to outsiders. So today, I will tell you with another identity." He turned his head to look at He Taiyuan and said in a deep voice. President He, let the unrelated people out and the prosecutor's office speak. He Jixian's smiling face suddenly stiffened, and he didn't expect Jiang Shicheng to suddenly get angry, making him unable to come down from the stage for a while. Everyone else, let's go out. Jiang Jian and I have something to talk about. He Taiyuan couldn't help but speak up to ease his son's embarrassment as he couldn't control the situation. Yes, President. As soon as He Taiyuan spoke, everyone below stood up and left the conference room. He Jixian cast a gloomy glance at the two people still sitting and left the conference room. Park Junlong covered his head and stared fiercely at Jiang Shicheng, following behind. Jiang Shicheng leaned against his seat and smiled lightly as he watched. The door of the conference room was closed, and Jiang Shicheng took a deep breath of his cigarette and twisted it out in the ashtray in front of him. Dad, I have been investigated. I know, it's Xianchuo's person, He Taiyuan said in a deep voice. How do you want to solve this matter? It's not just because of Jian, I've already done almost everything, but I still need to discuss with you. Some specific details need to be explained clearly in order to achieve mutual understanding. You say. On Monday, the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office released a press conference, announcing that I am an undercover agent in the prosecutor's office and that I have been secretly contacting the Black Society just to gather intelligence. Jiang Shicheng looked serious. Are you saying? To cut off their investigation into you as an undercover agent. A hint of doubt flashed in He Taiyuan's eyes. Jiang Shicheng has been a prosecutor for so long and can still help the Southern Cave Society, a large part of which is because he holds his criminal evidence in his hands. If the prosecutor's office announces Jiang Shicheng's undercover identity in a few days, then the tricks in his hands will naturally be of no use. As for the kindness of funding and the friendship between husband and wife, for now, I don't know how much more Jiang Shicheng can read, probably only 3 points, He Taiyuan thought to himself. This is not the main purpose, Jiang Shicheng said. I am currently under investigation, and it is difficult to conceal what I have done here. The prosecutor's office does not know my true identity, and I have also communicated with the prosecutor's office. This press conference was also a blessing that I exchanged for credit and the local prosecutor's office to avoid the investigation. So. Are you still our undercover agent stationed in the prosecutor's office? He Taiyuan understood clearly and turned to ask. Yes, on the surface, I have completely cut off contact with the Black Sexy Society. After all, an undercover agent with a public identity cannot have too much contact with you anymore. Jiang Shicheng's tone changed. But don't forget, my other identity is your son.In.Law, and I will contact you privately by phone. Who would know? Jiang Shicheng chuckled lightly. So Dad doesn't have to worry at all, everything remains the same, but the Southern Dong Society needs to openly express their anger and fear that they know I am an undercover agent. Yu reading www.uukangshu.net. In the coming days, the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office will focus on cracking down on the black and evil forces in several central districts of Seoul. You should make some plans early. He picked up the business plan in front of him, roughly scanned a few pages, and then looked up with a smile, saying, I see that you are also preparing for industrial adjustment and transfer, so you should be prepared. Almost, the whitewashing industry and filling criminal loopholes are all plans formulated by the community, He Taiyuan nodded. Since the last century, the Southern Cave Society has been in existence for more than 20 years. Now, the power of the Black and Sexy Society is being suppressed and becoming increasingly tight. Early industrial transfer and asset washing are the key. From licking blood at the tip of the knife to steadily making money, from being a black and shy society to becoming a capitalist, comfort and status have suddenly increased by several levels, and the people in the community are all pleased to agree. Although there are still a few stubborn pricks with low cultural levels. However, with Jiang Shicheng working as an undercover agent in the prosecutor's office and bribing some officials, these plans are not difficult to implement. Upon hearing what He Taiyuan said, Jiang Shicheng nodded and said, That's good. I will do my best to secretly provide some shelter for the Southern Cave Society. I will leave immediately. Before we leave, let's have another argument. As for what to say to those people in the community, you should have been familiar with it for a long time. Don't worry, first tell me how you and Jian are doing. How could she take the initiative to investigate you? He Taiyuan asked with some concern and some anticipation. Jian. Jiang Shicheng sighed lightly and said helplessly, You know Jian's personality. It's just that I heard our conversation last night and thought I was in the same league as you. It's okay, I'll go back tonight and enlighten you. He Taiyuan frowned slightly and nodded to show understanding, while his mind was recalling the 2 phone calls half an hour ago. Chapter 8. I just made mistakes that men make. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Half an hour ago. Dad. He Jian reluctantly shouted, wanting to make herself realize clearly that her father was a wicked and unscrupulous leader of the black society. She was constantly stimulating herself with this sense of shame. Hey, Jian, what's up with calling Dad? Do you want to come back and take a look? Are you short of money? Or is that kid Shicheng bullying you? Are you busy lately? Is being a judge fun? Have you missed Dad? Dad really misses you, ha ha ha. Various questions came from the other end of the phone, speaking so fast that Jian couldn't get in. She took a deep breath and silently recited in her heart, he is the evil leader. In the end, when He Taiyuan stopped speaking, she asked in a deep voice. To be honest, is Shicheng Oba your undercover agent in the prosecutor's office? On the other end of the phone, a hint of surprise flashed in He Taiyuan's eyes, but in an instant, he returned to normal. Jiang Shicheng just called him and said a few simple words. My relationship with you is most likely known to Jian. She will call you and ask 2 questions. Firstly, am I an undercover agent placed by the prosecutor's office in your area? Secondly, am I an undercover agent placed by you in the prosecutor's office? The first one is that you must be very shocked and ask a question, and then say that I only came into contact with you to repair the relationship between you. If it's the second type, you have to behave very calmly and say that I am an undercover agent arranged by the prosecutor's office at your place, but you already know why I didn't take action. You said it's for her consideration and don't want her to get hurt right after getting married. I must dispel Jian's speculation about my identity. As for the future, I will have a face-to-face meeting with you. I think you should understand more about it than I do. The phone just hung up for less than 2 minutes. And what Jian is asking now is the second situation. Although I don't understand that Jiang Shicheng's tone today is different from his previous dominant tone, the Southern Cave Society still needs his protection for the time being, and he has no reason to betray himself. I think it's quite urgent, and it's also for the sake of himself and the Southern Cave Society. Thinking of this, He Taiyuan spoke calmly and softly. He is an undercover agent sent by the prosecutor's office, I already knew. What? I already knew. Jian was stunned. Yes, are you asking me again why I didn't stop or take action directly? He Taiyuan gradually controlled the rhythm. For his daughter, he had no choice but to return, but he still had a good understanding. Why? Jian remained silent for a while and asked in a low voice. Because I don't want to hurt you and make you unhappy by dealing with Shicheng, the middle-aged father began to lie. I know what I did when I was young can be very harmful to you and your mother, but I am also a father, and I have long realized my mistake. I used to have no choice, but now I just want to be a good father. He Taiyuan tightly grasped the good opportunity created for him by Jiang Shicheng and went out with a heartfelt emotional card swish. He still really wants to establish a good relationship with his precious daughter. Father. I only remember that you were the president of the Southern Cave Society, who abused your mother and led a group of scumbags who committed all sorts of evil. Jian snorted coldly and continued, do you want to be a good father? There is also a good father who is a 23-year-old illegitimate daughter outside. I just made a mistake that every man would make. You still can't forgive me, Jian. Besides, Jian has always wanted to meet you, she's not wrong. He Taiyuan was a little anxious. No need to say. Jian hung up the phone directly, leaving behind a long busy tone from He Taiyuan's side. Jian. Axiba. He Taiyuan was furious and walked into the conference room, slamming his phone onto the conference table. The backbone members of the Southern Cave Society on both sides of the conference table stood up one after another, lowering their heads and holding their hands in front of them, looking at each other and not daring to speak. Their boss controls the underground forces in the 2 districts of Ruizhou in Jiangnan, and is also considered a top figure in Seoul. However, every time they involve that young lady, he always becomes powerless and furious. When they vaguely heard the boss shouting that name in the hallway in the conference room, many people had already stood up in advance. To avoid being used as a vent later on. After hanging up the phone, He Taiyuan clenched her hands tightly and her eyes were conflicted. Didn't he lie to me? Or did he lie to me with that man? Or was it really that I was overthinking? She couldn't figure out the way around it, and the words from all sides and the conspiracy she heard that night were swirling in her mind. For a moment, He Taiyuan's heart was in turmoil. For a long time, she looked up as if she had made up her mind. Since Jiang Shicheng said it would be clear on Monday, he doesn't have to do any more useless work. Compared to his father's cunning image, Jiang Shicheng has always been a righteous prosecutor since he met her. Although she still has some doubts in her heart, those can be gradually understood later. As long as Jiang Shicheng still leans towards the side of justice. Jiang Shicheng and He Taiyuan briefly talked about the details of the plan, and then talked about He Taiyuan's thoughts on the two of them. Finally, when it was almost time, Jiang Shicheng suggested leaving Axiba. He Taiyuan, don't be disrespectful. If the prosecutor's office is willing to give you a message in advance, it will look up to you. You dare to pretend to be an uncle in front of the prosecutor. You don't think it's just my father.In. Law. Let me send you to prison every minute. Jiang Shicheng slammed the table, making a deafening sound, and then angrily cursed. Although acting, the emotions expressed are very sincere. Relying on the handle in his hand to threaten himself and do so many things, saying that his son.In. Law is like a son, is actually just a tool with higher utilization value. I'm afraid only he has a little bit of sincerity towards his daughter, but he can't resist the desire for power and influence. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been the boss for a long time and would have gone to take care of myself. The members who had been waiting outside the door for a long time heard a loud noise in the room and immediately twisted the door open, shouting and rushing in. Stop it. Axiba. The prosecutor is amazing. President. How's it going? He Taiyuan leaned back in his seat, his face turned pale, and waved his hand to the crowd. Yu reading www.uukangshu.net signaled not to block the door. His face turned pale, partly because he was pretending, and partly because he felt genuine emotions in Jiang Shicheng's just cursing. This kid seems to really want to do this. Jiang Shicheng glanced coldly at the crowd standing at the door, chuckled contemptuously, and walked away with his long legs. President. Most people slowly dispersed and retreated, but there were still a few people staring at Jiang Shicheng, unwilling to let go. They all spread out. Are you trying to rebel? He Taiyuan shouted in a low voice. Jiang Shicheng laughed arrogantly twice, then suddenly stopped when he passed by Park Junlong with a bandage wrapped around his head. He reached out and patted Park Junlong's face, saying with a smile. As a member of the Black Snake Society, you must abide by the rules. Don't look at a prosecutor with such eyes. I just don't care about it for the time being for the sake of President He's face. Ignoring Park Junlong's eyes as wide as those of a cow, Jiang Shicheng clapped his hands and left happily. As a stick, being able to open your eyes so wide seems to be a degree of wanting to kill yourself on the spot. Arriving at the parking lot, Jiang Shicheng got into the car and glanced at his watch. It's already past 4 p.m. and I have to return to the prosecutor's office. Although he is still on wedding leave, it still needs to be resolved with He Taiyuan. Being a prosecutor is actually a very tiring task, with heavy affairs, regular assessments, and having to work to solve cases and study after work. Unless it's done poorly, there is only one path to promotion to make it easier. However, compared to other South Korean civil servants, this is still relatively easy compared to those who work. Driving to Seoul's Central Inspection Center, halfway through, the phone rang and Jiang Shicheng glanced at it, which was an unfamiliar number. Who is it? Jiang Jian, it's me, Park Junlong. Chapter 9. Only He Taiyuan is a good person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Who is it? Jiang Jian, it's me, Park Junlong. Park Junlong's voice seemed somewhat excited. Why, your head doesn't hurt anymore. Jiang Shicheng felt inexplicable. He had just beaten him, but Park Junlong's tone didn't sound any resentment. It's not painful anymore. I accidentally picked up Jiang Jian's cup with my head and apologized, Park Junlong said in a flattering tone. Ha! Jiang Shicheng suddenly felt a sense of joy in his heart and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Is this kid forced by He Taiyuan or is it his own intention? There were many people in the conference room just now, it's my fault. Mr. Jiang Jian has a large number, so don't argue with me, Park Junlong said with a low attitude and a smile. Who means this? Of course it was my own intention. Brother Zhixian asked me to take action, but after thinking about it, I didn't dare. He's still angry now. Park Junlong spoke very quickly, shaking both the front and back out. Jiang Shicheng held the phone silently. Jiang Jian, I really didn't want to have any grudges with you, but I can't help but follow Zhixian's words. Look. Don't worry, I have no grudges against you, Jiang Shicheng said with a smile, but I may come to you for something later. He felt that this young man was indeed not simple, and this technique of pretending to be wrong and then admitting it was not something that anyone could easily achieve. I understand, I will do whatever I can. Park Junlong quickly agreed. Okay, I have something to do, I'll hang up first. Looking at the Seoul Central Inspection building in front of him, Jiang Shicheng said hang up the phone, put away his phone, and press the brake. I glanced at my watch and it was already around 5 o'clock. The Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office was established in 2004, and before that, only the Seoul District Prosecutor's Office was established. Jiang Shicheng was the second batch of prosecutors to be admitted here. Entering the office building, people greeted him in groups of 3 or 2 along the way. Jiang Shicheng was somewhat familiar, but couldn't remember his specific identity. He could only confirm his name and position with the identification documents on their chests. The unaccepted memories of the original owner gradually dissipate over time, while marginalized memories dissipate more rapidly. Jiang Shicheng quickened his pace and arrived at his office. He is under the jurisdiction of the 6th Department of Criminal Investigation under the 2nd Chief Prosecutor's Office. Currently, there are only 7 criminal departments, and each department, along with the minister, has approximately 7 or 8 prosecutors. Their entire criminal department belongs to the Serious Crime Unit, mainly responsible for investigating and handling various criminal, economic, high-tech, and corruption crimes. Ding, the elevator opened and following the hallway of the floor, Jiang Shicheng found his office. He opened the door and glanced at it, but suddenly lost interest. 3 men. One sat by the door, while the other 2 sat opposite him, facing the door, chatting and laughing. This is the outer room, and his office is located inside this room, with a glass wall blocked by blinds. As soon as he entered the door, the person standing by the door immediately stood up, bowed lightly to him, and softly shouted. Prosecutor Jiang, how did you come? The 2 men also had a solemn expression and stood up to bow. The person at the door is his practical officer, named Han Shanmin. He is wearing golden glasses, tall and thin, with a fair and clean appearance, quite delicate. Unfortunately, it's not a woman, Jiang Shicheng sighed inwardly. The other 2 were his search officers, named Ding Taijing and Nan Dongyuan, who were ordinary in appearance but had good energy and spirit, and appeared to belong to the elite type. He only knows the identities of a few people, but he has some missing memories of what happened and did with the original owner. Well, there's something to do when you come back, you guys are busy. Jiang Shicheng pretended to be calm, but his heart was still a bit relaxed. When a prosecutor, apart from their superiors, almost all public officials bow and respectfully address themselves. Even though the general public detests prosecutors, they still have to be respectful when they see them. Jiang Jian, there have been many unresolved cases these days, and I have left them all on my desk, reminded Han Shanmin, the practice officer. Jiang Shicheng nodded to indicate that he knew, and then looked through the glass wall towards his desk. About a dozen or so cases. Although he is in the Criminal Investigation Department 6, the small cases assigned to him are insignificant and unnoticed, and some cases can even be resolved through mediation. However, this was also voluntarily requested by the original owner. Let's put it aside first. Has Prosecutor Jin Jianyu ever approached me? Jiang Shicheng asked. He also needs to visit Jin Jianyu to explain a bit, so as not to find out what's wrong with him in the past 2 days before the press conference. Yes, about 2 hours ago, I was supposed to be in room 2. I heard him say he wanted to try a suspect and asked us to bring a message, saying that you should remember to look for him when you come back. Han Shanmin answered softly and clearly. Okay, I'll go first. Jiang Shicheng led the door and turned his head towards the interrogation room. He had only taken 2 steps when the office door was opened. Prosecutor, wait a moment. Han Shanmin's soft voice came from behind. What's wrong? Jiang Shicheng turned around in confusion. Han Shanmin shouted to stop Jiang Shicheng, then leaned in and whispered. Prosecutor, it seems that the financial department has discovered your matter. What's going on? Jiang Shicheng felt a chill in his heart, with a puzzled expression on his face. The prosecutor had excessive contact with the Southern Cave Society, covering up crimes and giving gifts to the minister, Han Shanmin said softly. Jiang Shicheng's face slightly became solemn. He thought that Jin Jianyu was just starting to investigate him, but he didn't expect that he was about to have his underwear stripped off. I really want him to face the people directly. I'm afraid if we continue the investigation, we will uncover his identity as a double agent. How did you know? What do you think? Jiang Shicheng asked seriously. I pulled out the gold detector and had a private chat, showing my hatred and disdain towards you. He thought I was a righteous gentleman like him, so he briefly told me. Han Shanmin lifted his head, pushed his glasses, and smiled softly, saying. Jin Jian is just an idealistic fool. He is full of justice and ambition, but he is just talking to himself. No one in the prosecutor's office will care about him, nor will anyone agree with him. The same goes for you, prosecutor. Be good, only Jin Jianyu is a good person in the entire prosecutor's office, right? Jiang Shicheng nodded in satisfaction. From Han Shanmin's performance, it can be seen that this practical officer, who is bound to his own future and destiny, is basically colluding with others. He is like a bird of a feather. It's okay if you're not a good person, it's comfortable to use. Okay, I know everything you said. You go ahead and get busy. I'll go find a gold check and chat when I come back. Jiang Shicheng instructed, put one hand in his pocket and turned around to leave. Han Shanmin pushed his glasses back and smiled gently. However, after 2 days of absence, Jiang Jian seemed to have become different, more calm and confident than before. Under heavy pressure, the previous Jiang Jian appeared frivolous and humble. However, this is also good. Jiang Shicheng has made progress and grown, and he can climb higher along this vine. Inside the observation room, Jiang Shicheng saw Jin Jianyu, who was interrogating a pervert doctor across the glass wall. He knocked on the glass and signaled for him to come out. During the interval when Jin Jianyu came over, Jiang Shicheng glanced at Jin Xianbin, who was bound to a chair in the interrogation room. Except for the footprints he had kicked at the beginning, he looked intact. According to the normal path of a prosecutor, Jin Xianbin should be lying on the ground now with tears streaming down his face. Jin Jianyu is still too upright. The sound of opening the door rang, and Jin Jianyu entered the observation room. Jiang Shicheng clapped his hands and gestured for the remaining people to go out first. Could you please go out for a while? I have a few words to explain to Jin Jian. The search officers and operators stood up and bowed before leaving. Shicheng, what are you doing for? After everyone went out, Jiang couldn't help but ask first. But he didn't know that the one who opens his mouth first often loses. Just like between men and women, often only women open their mouths upon hearing his question, Jiang Shicheng couldn't help but blush. Senior, I was sent to work as an undercover agent. What? Chapter 10. A first-class actor, one touch and one flow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Senior, I was sent to work as an undercover agent. What? There's no prosecutor who works as an undercover agent. Jiang said incredulously. Prosecutors have a noble status and outstanding abilities, and should be used in more critical and difficult situations, rather than working as undercover agents in the black society. Just hand over this dangerous and fortunate job to the police. Alas, Senior, please don't ask any more. The minister is pressing too hard. Jiang Shicheng's face was full of helplessness, and his eyes showed shame and regret. I also want to work with you to uphold the dignity of the law and judicial justice, and fight against crime and corruption, but Minister Li, you also know, sigh. He grabbed Jiang shoulder with force, looking painful. I have just entered the prosecutor's office and cannot refuse the minister's requests and orders, so I can only. But please rest assured, Senior. I will cut off this task next Monday and cut off contact with the Black Sexy Society. Senior, you must trust me. Jiang was confused by Jiang Shicheng's genuine emotions. He had already thought so many questioning words in his mind, but couldn't say them for a moment. Jiang Shicheng looked at his reaction and knew that he was unlikely to continue investigating himself for the time being, at least after the Monday he mentioned. But on Monday, he was able to use a press conference to conduct a just cut, and he no longer had to investigate his motives and reasons. Senior, that's all for now. I have to come to an end to my undercover career and leave first. Okay. Jiang didn't say anything more, but fell completely silent. Jiang Shicheng stopped talking nonsense and turned around to leave. Looking at Jiang Shicheng's back and thinking about what he had just said, Jiang could only investigate his thoughts and wait for Monday's arrival. What else can we do? We can only temporarily choose to trust Jiang Shicheng. After all, in the past, Shicheng was such a perfect and just legal person. He really wants this talented, righteous, and fearless younger generation to return to their original form. Looking up at Jiang Xianbin in the interrogation room, he was somewhat relieved. After being brought in, he was also pleased and explained the specific location, process, and relevant personnel of Renzhong Hui selling prohibited drugs. Just contact the police station directly to arrest the person in the future, which can be considered as closing a case. In the corridor, Jiang Shicheng rubbed his face with a relaxed expression. It is said that first-class actors are in the officialdom, and second-rate actors are in the shopping mall. He is top-notch. I casually dialed Yin Suyan's phone number, but he still hasn't figured out about this unscrupulous student. So he needs to go and touch it now to see if Yin Suyan is also prone to tears. Senior. The phone answered, and Yin Suyan's joyful voice came from inside. Suyan, are you at home? Yes, are you coming over, Senior? Yin Suyan's voice sounded even happier. Well, I'll go to your house right away. I have some questions to ask, Jiang Shicheng replied, then hung up the phone. After greeting Han Shanmin and telling them not to work overtime, Jiang Shicheng drove to Yin Suyan's house. During this time, he briefly pondered again. Yin Suyan dared to post that photo on social media, and in theory, she received the consent of the victim. If you release it recklessly without your own consent, it can only be said to be the ultimate green tea, with the intention of breaking up the couple in your heart. I just don't know what happened between my original self and her. When I crossed over, I happened to have some memories washed away by Jiang Xianbin, and he couldn't recall it. I can only have face-to-face communication with Yin Suyan. Jiang Shicheng felt a bit tired in his brain while driving the car. In just half a day, he engaged in a fierce battle with 3 or 4 people, and with the added time of driving, he never stopped for a moment. Acting is tiring, otherwise why give 208 million episodes? However, these are urgent issues that need to be resolved once and for all, and he cannot afford to be careless. I just hope that after lifting away 2 big mountains, I can enjoy myself well. Unconsciously, she arrived at Yin Suyen's house. I don't know if it's because of time travel, but his memory is terrifying. Although he only walked once, he is so familiar that it feels like he has walked 1,000 times. Ding dong, come on. Yin Suyen's cheerful shout came from inside the door. The door opened outward, and Yin Suyen held on to the doorknob, standing gracefully at the door, tilting her head to look at him. There was a noticeable light makeup on her face, making her look even more pink and delicious. She was wearing a navy blue silk camisole with a deep neck pajama, revealing a vast expanse of snowy mountains and a small lace edge of the same color. The hem was cut off on the knee, and thin black stockings wrapped around straight legs. They were probably running quickly without shoes, and their small toes curled up slightly due to excitement, tightly gripping the blanket. Jiang Shicheng nodded calmly, expressing deep appreciation for the hospitality of the young student. This junior sister just understands. He smiled and handed the gift he was carrying, which he had bought along the way. Ah, thank you, senior. Yin Suyen happily accepted the gift and pushed the door open. Senior, come in quickly. The slippers are ready. I think not only are your shoes ready, but also your people ready for battle. Jiang Shicheng responded with a smile and put on his slippers to follow her into the room. Why are you so embarrassed when the senior comes to be a guest and doesn't let me prepare dinner and bring gifts? Yin Suyen said as she walked, is there something the senior wants me for? She tilted her head and blinked, appearing delicate and charming. Indeed, I have something to ask you. Jiang Shicheng sat down on the sofa, stretched out one hand and placed it on the backrest, crossing his legs. Oh, senior, if you have anything you want to ask, just ask directly. Yin Suyen finished speaking and went to the kitchen to get 2 cups. She turned her back to Jiang Shicheng and picked up water from the water dispenser. Jiang Shicheng looked at her figure, which had become more rounded and perky due to bending down, and his eyes appreciated it. The effect improvement brought by wearing special equipment is different. I want to ask, when did the photo you posted, Suyen, come from? He was straightforward and didn't procrastinate. Playing tricks with women is a tiring and self-deprecating thing. It's better to pile stakes with women. As soon as the problem arose, he saw a noticeable jolt in Yin Suyen's body. There is indeed a problem. Yin Suyen walked over with 2 cups of water and placed one on the coffee table in front of him, whispering softly. Didn't my senior ask me to post it? What? Jiang Shicheng felt like his brain was also going to short-circuit. What does it mean I asked her to post it? Did the original owner really go to have a room with Yin Suyen? He tried his best to stabilize his expression, pretending to be relaxed and saying. I know, but my mind feels a bit confused after being hypnotized. But this paragraph really disrupted his rhythm. With a turn of his gaze, Jiang Shicheng looked at the cup of water in front of him. Now, he deeply suspected that this cup of water was the legendary sleeping black tea. He changed his expression and said in a familiar tone. Suyen, is there anything to eat at home? I didn't have dinner and I'm a bit hungry. When a senior encounters a difficult question, he always digs off the topic, Yin Suyen complained, but obediently turned around to get something to eat. Seeing Yin Suyen enter the kitchen, Jiang Shicheng quickly swapped the positions of 2 cups of water. He has always boasted about being a prime minister, not only with the ambition of a prime minister, but also with the illness of a prime minister. You can't deceive him with this little trick of drugging in water. Soon, Yin Suyen walked out carrying a delicate cake. Senior, this is all we have at home. Take it to cushion your stomach. Okay, Jiang Shicheng took the cake and took a quick bite before placing it on the table. Suyen picked up her water glass and took a sip, while Jiang Shicheng took a sip to avoid embarrassment. Anyway, the cup had already been changed, and he wanted to see how Suyen and others would react. Thinking of this, he turned his eyes and decided to find some topics to procrastinate. Suyen, I suddenly feel a bit nostalgic for my college years. Can you tell me what happened back then? His eyes were blank, his expression nostalgic. Really? The senior probably didn't miss me, but forgot her promise to me. Suyen's expression changed, with a hint of resentment in her eyes. Promise. Jiang Shicheng was taken aback.